Where were you during Brockhampton summer? The 14-member group had one of the craziest runs of 2017, dropping a trilogy of acclaimed tapes called Saturation, and quickly becoming one of the hottest acts out, with their eclectic mix of pop, rap, indie, and pretty much everything in between. They signed a deal with RCA worth a rumored amount of $15 million, and while working on a highly anticipated follow-up to Saturation, they ran into some drama, and one of the key members left the group. It permanently altered both the dynamics of the music itself and of the interpersonal relationships that made the group so appealing and easy to root for in the first place. They still went on to drop a few more projects as a group, even scoring their biggest hit in 2019 with Sugar, peaking at number 66 on the Billboard Hot 100. But the writing was on the wall. The group had always been open about eventually calling it quits and having everyone go their separate ways to start or continue their own solo careers. That finally happened in 2022 when they dropped their final 2 projects and hung it up for good. Now on social media, I see a lot of people talk about that Brockhampton summer like it was this thing they were totally above in 2017. You know that movie, I Know What You Did Last Summer? I know you were there rapping Keep a Gold Chain on My Neck, Fly as a Jet, and your little golf hoodie at some sunny festival that's closest to wherever you're from. But sometimes looking back on music that's so specific to one era can alter the way that you think of it, because the music gets associated with a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore. And ideally, you've changed for the better since then. So you look back on the old you as immature, naive, maybe you cringe at some of the things you used to do or say or wear or listen to. But it's not 2017 anymore. And as a result of that breakup, there are now like a dozen talented artists who were once a part of this blob making their own stuff. Almost all the members have been publicly active since then. So today, I'm gonna take a look at what they've been up to and how they've been doing. But before we do all that, if you like videos on music like this one, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. I post a video every week. If you wanna see it early, go to my Instagram, HADJI Gaviota, join my broadcast channel, and throw me a follow. I post all my videos in my broadcast channel one day early for free. Also wanted to say thanks to everybody who's checked out my group Elmjack's new song, Walk You Home. We have another song coming this month. Stay tuned for more information on that. All right, let's get back to the video. Kevin Abstract was the de facto leader of Brockhampton, and also had the most recognizable solo career out of any of the members, before they blew up as a collective together in 2017. His 2014 album MTV 1987 was the first time that I heard him, and I used to run his song Drugs all the time on my iPod Classic. His second album, American Boyfriend, was a pretty big moment as well. I remember one of his songs getting premiered by Zane Lowe. And I actually used to book shows for my college back then, so I hosted a Kevin Abstract show in 2016, like a couple days before American Boyfriend came out. And to anybody who starts doing the math on the fact that I was in college in 2016, yes, I'm old. It should shock nobody that Kevin has been arguably the most active member of Brockhampton post-breakup. Even while the band was together, he dropped a solo album called Arizona Baby in 2019. And more recently, he was dropping singles like Slugger and Sierra Nights. If you ask people to bet on who the first one to drop a solo album would be, I think most people would have picked him. I hope nobody put money on that because technically, Kevin did start his album rollout first, but 2 other former members dropped a collab tape that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, just 5 days before the official Kevin Abstract solo album came out. I say official because really, one of the last 2 Brockhampton albums, The Family, was basically a Kevin solo album. But I digress. He dropped his true solo album, Blanket, in November of 2023. And it was a pretty big sonic departure from both his work in Brockhampton and his more recent solo stuff. The lead single and title track, Blanket, set the tone with these loud guitars and Kevin ping-ponging between whispering and screaming. This is functionally a rock album, with influences here and there from indie and grunge and different other little pockets of rock music. Kevin had explored stuff like this a bit on earlier projects like American Boyfriend, and songs like What Should I Do, which is a personal favorite of mine, feels like an evolution of an earlier song like Yellow, maybe. But Blanket, to me, has a much darker tone than a lot of his earlier stuff. I also really like the album's aesthetic with the monster creatures that you see in all the videos. Although the actual cover that he used, I find to be a little bit off-putting, and I don't know why the monsters aren't on the cover because I thought he really nailed that aspect of the visual rollout. But I don't know, I'm not the guy making the calls. And I guess I'm just a fan of like weird little guys like that. Like as I'm filming this, I see, like I once used this in a music video. Like look at this thing, bro. Like no wonder I like the Kevin Abstract shit. It's easy in retrospect to call Blanket a departure and not an evolution because Kevin didn't really continue down this rock path after it came out. In 2024, he went back to his more melodic rap stuff with Tennessee with Lil Nas X. He also made a cool appearance on Quadeca's album Scrapyard on the song Texas Blue. And there's a whole mixtape called Glue that is mostly confined to YouTube Lucy's, Discord chats, and an untitled link. He tweeted about it saying that some of it would be on DSPs and other parts of it wouldn't. And as of now, only 2 of the 11 songs that are part of the Glue era are on DSPs, Big Dog and Tennessee. Most recently, he dropped a collab with the rapper Heaven on YouTube called Miss the Moment. It's hard to say what's next for Kevin, because he's the king of announcing things and then not finishing them, but I'd never bet against getting more Kevin Abstract. And there's no denying that he's kept us pretty fed since Brockhampton broke up, even if you have to dig a little bit to find the stuff like Glue. Also, it's important to note that Kevin's album Blanket and some of the singles from Glue that are on streaming services are coming out through RCA, which is the label that had Brockhampton on it. Only one other remaining member from Brockhampton is currently releasing through RCA, and his name is Matt Champion. Like Kevin, had some solo work out before Brockhampton took off. My personal favorite was his song Fangs, a kinda slackery love song that falls somewhere between indie, R&B, and hip-hop. Matt was quiet as a church mouse following the band's breakup in 2023. He basically outwardly took the year off, but he was hard at work, and he returned in 2024 with the single Aphid featuring Dijon, an artist that I'm a big fan of and I've covered on this channel before. Dijon has been on a hell of a run, but this wasn't some like label orchestrated quid pro quo type working thing. These guys have known each other for years, and they've given each other a lot of love. In 2019, Dijon told Complex, "I wouldn't have made my first songs as a solo artist without Matt. He taught me to amplify my impulses and eccentricities by showing me how fearless he was when he makes music." In return, Matt shouted him out on the Brockhampton song Johnny in the lyrics, "I would keep this pen up if it weren't for my mom, if it weren't for Dijon." And so the two have a great working relationship on Matt's album Mika's Laundry. Dijon has writing or production credits on 6 out of the 13 songs on the album, basically half of it. As a whole, the album is softer, more folky, and less hip-hop than Matt's contributions to Brockhampton. He's still rapping on here from time to time, and the song G-Biv is a big smack in the face in a good way. But the overall tone is stripped back and muted. It lets the writing shine on songs like Everybody Likes You, a big standout to me about being the type of guy that goes out, everybody has a ton of fun with you, you get drunk, you have a great time, but then when that guy is alone by himself, he's sad. Super real song topic. The 3-track run of Aren't You Excited, Slug, and Everybody Likes You kind of ran my head. The 3-track run of Aren't You Excited, Slug, and Everybody Likes You, I had on repeat throughout all of 2024. Matt wasn't satisfied with just one album's worth of songs, so he doubled back and dropped an EP called Slint's Favorite, and he dropped 4 songs each as singles and then put them together as an EP later on. Faye is my favorite, and it's low-key like vamped out. This is like Opium Matt. I think it's cool that he found a way to make bangers like Faye and G-Biv that can still exist in the rest of the world that he built out so meticulously, you know? Compared to Kevin, who is all over the place, and that honestly is part of the appeal of Kevin Abstract. It seems as if Matt is really focused on building out a very specific world for his music. We'll have to see what comes next, but I gotta say that in my opinion, when you take into consideration like both the music and the aesthetic and the success of it, he's probably done the best out of all of the members in terms of really establishing himself as a solo artist. Matt went on tour for Mika's Laundry last year, and this year he's gonna be at Gov Ball in June, and I will be there, so if you see me there, say what's up. After Matt and Kevin, I think it makes sense to talk about a member who had his hands on both of their post-Brockhampton projects. Romil, of course, was the super producer of Brockhampton. He had his hands in the writing or production of 33 out of 48 of the songs on the Saturation trilogy, 11 out of 12 songs on Ginger, 11 out of 13 songs on Roadrunner, 6 out of 17 on The Family, and 7 out of 11 on TM. All that work is more than enough to keep anyone busy during the band's run, but he still found time to produce for an artist like Kali Uchis while the band was together. He also put me on to one of my favorite underground artists, Timothy Bright, by producing his song Routes back in 2021. I highly recommend listening to Timothy. Check out the song Quicksand, I think it's a good place to start. Post Brockhampton, he's been involved in both the major releases from Kevin and Matt. He produced on every song on Blanket and has a writing credit on Slow Motion, which is Matt's collab with the Blackpink member Jennie. It's good to see him still working with the boys, but he's also been given the chance to cast a wider net, and it's already paid dividends. He produced on Tyler the Creator's single Thought I Was Dead from Chromacopia, and has a cut on Future's album Mixtape Pluto with the song MJ. Most recently, he produced the newest Daniel Caesar and Rex Orange County collab. With producers, sometimes the nature of their role has them moving in silence a little bit. But I think it's fair to say we'll be seeing more and more of Romil as long as we're adventurous enough to check the credits. And now, for someone that we haven't seen as much of, Bareface, or Kieran, has always been probably the most enigmatic member of the group. His very distinctive singing voice won over a lot of fans, especially when they would put him at the end of all 3 of the albums in the trilogy. He's also renowned as a producer, and produced most of The Family, which is the Kevin Abstract pseudo-solo album, Brockhampton album, and has worked here and there with other non-BH artists like Boy Life. They have a track on Boy Life's first album, Dio, and recently, Boy Life has been touring and selling an unmarked vinyl of his next project, and somebody ripped that onto the internet, and there's a song with Kieran on it. It's floating around on YouTube, it gets taken down sometimes and then people put it back up. Besides that, it's been mostly quiet for Kieran since the band ended. I keep calling him Kieran because when The Family came out, he posted on social media that he wanted to retire the Bareface name. I feel like this is my time to put Bareface to bed. It's truly the dumbest name possibly ever. And sometimes it may feel like the bane of my existence, but without it, I wouldn't have found family in a country I have no roots in. For that reason alone, it'll always be great to me. He signed that note Kieran, which is also his real first name. So maybe if and when he releases solo music, he'll go by Kieran or he'll pick something new. Besides that unreleased Boy Life track, the only proof of life from Kieran post BH is a credit on a song from a duo named Mulheron, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Good song. The song's called Third Strike, definitely worth checking out. But yeah, there's not much else on the Kieran front right now, but hopefully that does change. Merlyn was one of the only Brockhampton artists to release solo work while the band was still together, dropping a bunch of singles in 2021 and 2022 like SYK, Green Light, and One of Us. He hit the ground running in 2023 after the breakup, dropping one of my favorite post-Brockhampton songs in Maza. My friend Air Atlantica produced it too, he's produced some of my music. The man has never made a bad beat in his life, shout out to him. Merlyn also featured on a couple up-and-coming artist songs in 2023, like Tommy Richmond, with the song I Got the Love, and Dreamer Isioma on the song Touch Your Soul. He consolidated a few of his singles in 2023 into the Dirty Thunder EP in October. And at the end of that month, he dropped a collab tape with fellow former Brockhampton member Ameer Vann called Slime in the Ice Machine. The two of them have good chemistry, and when you listen to this project, you kind of get a very particular corner of the Brockhampton sound, you know, the bangery, more upbeat side. You don't really hear the other, so I think people who like that type of Brockhampton music, they'll probably save a couple songs from this project, and if you were more of like the I like when Bareface sings at the end kind of guy, it might not be for you, but I don't think it was meant to be. And I'm not sure what's next musically for Merlyn. He didn't drop any solo material in 2024 on streaming services, though I think he's posted some loosies on SoundCloud, and he's definitely done some features here or there. There was talk in 2021 of a Merlyn solo album produced by legendary Wu-Tang Clan member The RZA, although that seems to have fallen by the wayside. What I really do want to do is shout out Merlyn for consistently using his platform on social media to talk about the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. He regularly does collab posts to raise awareness and donations for people in need. I think that's cool as hell, and I would like to see more artists of his stature do stuff like that. Ameer has had a head start on his solo career since he was kicked out of the group in 2018. I'm not really here to relitigate any of that discussion, there's a lot of it on the internet, and the band has talked about it more than enough, both outside of music and in the music. But if you're curious to hear more about it from Ameer's perspective, he did a really long interview with the channel Crisis Magazine last year that I watched, and I'm going to link in the description. He dropped an EP called Emmanuel. Followed that up with a single called Keep Your Distance in 2020 while he was still with RCA that did pretty well. And then he dropped one more single with them that didn't do as well. And as far as I could tell, he was dropped from the label then, or he had completed his requirements, I'm not really sure, but all of his releases since then have been independent. He did the collab with Merlyn in 2023, and then in 2024 released his first full project since Brockhampton called Woof. I think it's decent, although I don't think it lives up to the expectations that you might have created in your head if you were like, this guy had 5 years after leaving Brockhampton to drop his best stuff. Like, it doesn't feel like that, but there are some songs on here I really do like the track Good Boy. I think the production is great, and I think the storytelling is really good. He dropped another single last month called Stay With Me, so maybe he's building up to stay more consistent from here on out. Don McLennon, like Matt Champion 2, was quiet for the first year after the breakup. He started going outside again in 2024, returning with an EP called Prologue, and then right after an album called The Changing of the Trees. The style on both projects reminds me of something I would find during the blog era on a site like Two Dope Boys. And I mean that in a good way. I love music like that. Kind of like sample-based, kind of lyrical, pro-era type kind of rap music. And it makes sense because that's what Dom was on before Brockhampton took off. But it's cool to hear it more developed now. And I like when he makes references to things that he experienced as a member of this huge band. Because it's very rare you have the perspective of an artist like that who's seen so many things, who's traveled so much, and yet is still kind of giving us his first couple pieces of solo work. A very unique perspective to be rapping about. My favorite songs on The Changing of the Trees are Rivers, Gym Hours, and Russian Cream. It's a nice little 3-track run. One thing I thought was really cool and interesting is Dom has production credits on 5 out of 8 of the songs on the album. Beyond that, he was even doing some electronic music for the soundtrack of the game Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. He also voices a character in the game. I mean, that's a pretty sick side quest. But it's also indicative of how much he's grown as a producer since leaving the band. And I think that's really cool to see. He just posted a snippet on Twitter and Instagram that is super fire. And if he produced that, then he went up a whole other level. So I hope he drops that one soon. I think out of all the members, Joba's solo work is the biggest departure from their contributions with Brockhampton. He made his return in 2024 by posting a live rendition first of his song American Fever. The sunglasses and the bouncy piano-led production led to some Elton John comparisons. The music video he dropped a couple months later shows this metal box rolling through LA with like strangers looking at it kind of weird, and then at the end it jumps off a cliff into the ocean, and it low-key, like, I'm like, why did this make me emotional, bro? It's like a robot. I don't know, but the aesthetic was very retro in all the videos, very cool, very tailored to what the music sounds like. And he dropped a whole album called Russell Boring, which is his real government name, in September. It's really an incredible listen. A lot of it was made during the pandemic, as he told Break Magazine recently. I've always wanted to make an album of my own, but Brockhampton kept me so busy that it was always a secondary venture. Then when the pandemic hit, it really allowed me the space and time to explore what that could be. I'm gonna keep it real, this project was slept on. I didn't see a lot of discussion on it. Maybe that's because it's a bit of a departure from the rest of the Brockhampton sound. You know, it's almost going for a different audience than the people who were listening to Saturation. But maybe some of those people have grown up and would find this is their maturation. But man, it's so good. My personal favorite on the album is New Beginnings, but I think that People Need People and American Fever are also really great places to start. I think Joba sounds great over that piano. There's so much piano throughout the album, but it's very it's just so cool, man. I really like this project, and I'm hotly anticipating whatever he gives us next, although he did just drop an album, so maybe give him a little time. Jabari was one of the main producers on a lot of the Brockhampton projects, but post-band, he's branched out into being a solo artist. His artist name is Saga Boy, and he's dropped 2 singles in 2 years, Drunk Off Love and Scary. The ratio of drops has not been prolific, but the 2 songs themselves have been gas, especially Scary. It's always stuck in my head, like the it's got this really unique vocal melody, and the production is really great and interesting too, which is no surprise because, you know, we know him as a producer. There are a couple other snippets floating around, and people on Reddit have alluded to going to a listening party for a Saga Boy album in 2023. But who knows? That post is also gone, so it's hard to say. Hopefully we get more releases soon, but he hasn't really missed yet. And he is still working as a producer. He's been producing for a few other artists, including one that I really like named Giddy. He's dropped some super fire singles like Body Cry, Constantine, and Extra. Extra is my favorite out of those. I personally love that song. Giddy also has a writing credit on $1 Million Baby. Super talented guy, so watch out for him. In talking to Giddy for this video, he reiterated to me just how hard the Saga Boy vault is. So hopefully we get some of that soon and the people will wake up. Kiko had a ton of production credits on a lot of Brockhampton stuff, and so far in terms of released stuff, there isn't much out there post-band. He has 4 credits on Matt Champion's album, and he produced on one Merlyn song with another artist, Nate Day, called Visualize in 2024. Louis the Child and Absolutely's song Stay With Me dropped in 2023, and he has a credit on that, but I realized that that's just because they sampled an older Brockhampton song, so that doesn't really count. It's good to see that he's still working with some of the boys, and with the way the industry goes, you know, producers can be in there for years working on stuff that will eventually come out. It just hasn't come out yet, and it's not really up to the producer to post about it, so maybe he's been in the room with a bunch of people and we just don't know yet. HK was a graphic designer for the group, who helped with a lot of the art and the visuals. And just like the other members, he's branching out to work on the same thing with other artists. He actually helped edit this Ken Carson video for his song Overseas. That's pretty sick. He also chipped into the next thing that I'm about to talk about. John Nunes was the manager of Brockhampton, and you would see his face unlike a lot of other managers. He would pop up in a lot of the videos. When I booked Kevin for that show back in 2016, I met both him and Romil, and they were both incredibly nice. So I'm rooting for both of them, to be honest. Thanks to the BH subreddit, I was able to find what appears to be his YouTube channel, Life in the Scythe. It has 175 subscribers at the time of me writing this, and he has this animated series on there that reminds me of something that I would have watched on YouTube when I was a little kid. He's also got a video touring his old neighborhood in South Windsor, Connecticut, which is where a bunch of the Brockhampton guys grew up together, like him and Romil and Dom. The most recent thing that he posted on the channel appears to be a rap album that was made as a fantasy football league punishment. And it's not John rapping, I don't think. So yeah, John is out here on YouTube. HK did the logo for the series, and he, Dom, and the third guy that I'm about to mention all give their voices to the animated series as well. This one is a bonus because he hasn't been in the group for like damn near a decade, but I like his recent work so much that I have to shout it out again. I already did in a video that I did on musicians who have become teachers, because this guy's name was Rodney Tenner. He was a part of Brockhampton through 2016 through the album All American Trash, so he left right before Saturation to go and become a teacher. And now today he's a dean at a middle school in New York, and he makes music under his real name, Michael Kirby. And he dropped an album in 2023 called Shoulders Carry Honor. and it's one of my favorite solo releases from any former Brockhampton member. It's a concept album about his job. You know, he's singing and rapping about being a teacher, being a dean, you know, working a 9 to 5, trying to maintain your relationships outside of that. And it's like, if you've ever asked yourself, like, what would it sound like to hear a rap song from the perspective of a dean talking to a middle school student, like, you probably never imagined that, but when you hear it, you're like, whoa, that's actually a really cool topic to make a song about. The song's called Restorative Room, and it's by far my favorite song on the project. Highly recommend listening to that. Tons of R&B, neo-soul influence throughout, and it's pretty short, so you can run the whole album front to back. I can't recommend Shoulders Carry Honor enough. Speaking of recommendations, if you're a former Brockhampton listener, and you want a quick crash course in what you should listen to catch up, I got a list for you. And Brockhampton was always about the sum of its parts, with the varied musical contributions adding up to something that felt new in 2017, and also went on to inspire a lot of other artists. And the fun visuals and the promos that made it feel like you were one of the boys. So while following the original members as they go deeper into their own bags can be rewarding, it won't replicate the feeling of listening to a whole group. So for those who are looking to fill that group-sized hole in their heart, I have a few recommendations. Illusion Hills is probably the group most directly analogous to Brockhampton that I'm going to mention. I've even seen their music posted on the Brockhampton subreddit a few times. It makes sense on paper. Illusion Hills is a group of 10 artists living in California, making genre-bending pop, indie, R&B, hip-hop type stuff. And on the intro of their new project video Interference, the member MJ even says, "Everyone got a boy band. You think you're different or something?" So they're well aware of the comparisons, but my favorite songs from them don't really sound too much like Brockhampton. I personally love the song Serena Downtown, which has this crunchy guitar tone and then this falsetto hook, and the rap verses that remind me of Chitty Bang or some of that, you know, turn of the 2010s, in between the pop rap and blog era type hip-hop stuff, which I say that as a compliment because I'm very nostalgic for stuff like that, and rap music doesn't really sound like that anymore. I love that song. The whole tape is dope, but what might be my new favorite is So Bad, the song that they just dropped, after getting some motion on TikTok and Instagram Reels. And actually, one of the other groups that I want to talk about is featured on that song as well. Cairo are a pair of identical twins from Texas who used to make covers on TikTok under the name Cover Boys. After they got some attention, they moved to Los Angeles and linked up with a producer group named Cut and Dry, who also produce a lot of my music, which is how I first met the Cairo Boys. Cairo as a group bring a real R&B feel to the table. They can both sing their asses off and harmonize, and it must be really nice making harmonies when you have an identical twin brother who can just sing the other parts. You don't have to do both of them, you know? Just thinking about how convenient that would be in the studio. They had 2 EPs out, Love Letters from Houston and Return to Sender, before putting out their debut album called Are We There Yet under Def Jam at the end of last year. Full disclosure, I worked on the second track of that album called Anybody Home, so I am gonna recommend that. And I think the whole album is totally worth a listen. I really like Special and Break Bread. But specifically for Brockhampton fans, I would probably recommend the song Savior, as the hook sounds like it would be right up the alley of people who really like Ryan Beatty or Bareface. What More has been taking the algorithm by storm recently, with them rapping over flips of popular songs like Claro's Juna and SZA's Snooze. People have been calling them ethical Brockhampton in the comments to be funny, but don't get it twisted. What More is made up of a bunch of really dope New York artists who have been doing their thing independently for a minute. Cisco Swank has 2 really incredible albums under his belt, jazzy fusions of R&B, rap, and indie music. And he's an incredible instrumentalist. He's even toured as a band member for artists like No Name. My personal favorite song from him is I Don't Know Why. Yoshi T makes a sick brand of New York tinged alternative hip hop. My personal favorite for a while has been F Taste, but he just dropped a remix for his song Boss Coffee with 2 other New York rappers that I really like, Life of Tom and Lord Sko, so I'd recommend checking that out too. Also, all his visuals are fire. I think this guy's name is Pat Linehan, does a lot of the videos, super sick. Jackson August brings a poppier flavor to the group. I really like his song Cool Riff. I think it's sick. Very breezy indie vibes. Seb has that real New York rap voice, and I'm pretty new. I only found out about him through What More. But his new song Without You is really dope. Elijah Judah is the one flipping, mixing, and mastering all these songs and doing a hell of a job doing that. They just put all the flips out on Bandcamp. Understandably, might not be super easy to put that project on streaming services. Also, all the songs are like a minute or less. So they're basically like snippets. But they claim to be working on a debut album, so stay tuned. I also got to shout out artists like Mulheron and Giddy, who I've already talked about. I've been a Mulheron fan for years now. I really like their song On Me with Dijon. Anniversary is a real heart-wrencher, and then they have songs like Never Know that are a lot jazzier and funkier. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little tour through what all the Brockhampton members are up to. Maybe found a new recommendation. Let me know what you want me to cover next. Peace.